to the Savvy Young Professional podcast. My name is Tanida Mullen, and you have tuned in to the greatest show in podcast history. Yes, this is the Savvy Young Professional, and we are going to get into some interesting stuff today. Today on the show, I have Jasmin Brand. Jasmin is a brand strategist. She is the CEO of Brand Point, the founder of My Ford Life and Ford Daily. And today we're going to get into a little bit of detail about serving your community. Yes, we're going to talk about how you can get involved where you are, what it means to get involved where you are, and how can it really help you and help others in your community. If you want to know more about spreading the love and getting involved in your community, please stay tuned to this show. Okay, Jasmin, welcome to the Savvy Young Professional. Welcome to the show.
Thanks so much for having me.
Awesome. I talked a little bit about what you do, but I want you to give me your explanation of how you got to where you are right now and in your career.
Sure. Currently, right now, I am the CEO and co-founder of Brand Point, which is a marketing and branding agency. And my mom and I actually started the company a couple years back, and it's evolved over time. But in its current state, we provide opportunities online and offline for individuals and companies to connect with one another in a more kind of succinct way. So we use social media, we use events, we use really cool messaging in order to get people to connect with one another. And some of our clients could be large Fortune 100 companies, but then we also deal with just individuals who are looking to start businesses they have a business and they actually are not seeing any kind of a return or any kind of clients or sales. And so we'll come in and maybe revamp their logo. So really it's looking at how you can connect someone's identity, whether that's the visual identity, their logos, their website, or their online personality, which is their social media kind of presence. And we're kind of like the glue between all of those together.
Okay, so Brand Point can build people's personal brands as well.
Right. And what's interesting is it never really started out to be that way, but I was probably, I guess, the Brand Point's first client. When I started Brand Point, it came not planned, as a lot of companies do. I was laid off, and it kind of evolved into me doing consulting, and then, almost 8 years later, still doing it. But I actually I didn't have a huge marketing budget, and so I started using some of the techniques I use now for clients, but that's what I started using a couple of years ago. I didn't have any really money for marketing, so I started to use social media as a tool to kind of establish myself as what I really like to do, what my expertise was, and also start to build connections that were outside of my zip code, if you will. So Twitter was the tool I used, and it was the way I made connections across the country, and was able to start to establish my own personal brand. So in a funny way, my own personal branding story is kind of why I'm now able to help other people.
Okay, that's awesome. That's really interesting that you took that opportunity once, you were laid off and you said, okay, I'm gonna redo this. I'm not going to wait around for somebody to give me an opportunity. I'm gonna go out there. I'm gonna create this opportunity for myself. That's pretty awesome.
Well, no, Tanita, now I have to keep it real. I didn't plan on being an entrepreneur. So I had what I call the ramen years, right? So I was looking for a job. Nobody hired me. I was making a lot of money back then and was very cocky. And so I was offered lots of jobs and turned them down. Oh, I'll just wait for the next one. And 2 years later, with like $50 in the bank, and I had already I think I have up to like 40 different ramen recipes at that point. I know how to even make a dessert one too. That's how sad it was. The chocolate.
That's so funny. Somebody sent me a picture on Facebook, and it had it was a starter pack for when you don't want to spend money and you got food at home, and it had ramen, it had bologna,
yep.
It had concentrated grape juice.
Oh wow! Okay.
I was like, that is hilarious. But you know what? I think when you're in those times, that's when you're the most creative, because you're like, I need to figure something out for dinner and for my life. So it just
Exactly.
works.
Well,
Okay.
and sometimes business, ideas and stuff, and most of your entrepreneurs, some people grow up that way. And actually, now that I look back, and I always had little businesses when I was growing up, but a lot of times it sneaks up on you, especially for women. You don't really go out set out to be a CEO, and it just kind of creeps up on you. So that's kind of I knew I would probably own my own business one day, but not in the way it happened. Which is why I always tell people to be open to new opportunities and things that may not be on your current plan.
Yeah, that's exactly right. So that kind of leads into kind of what I want to get into today. And it's really about serving your community and volunteering and really digging deep where you are, because I'm not really sure if people understand how valuable it is, number one, to give back to where you eat and live and shop, and build your life, but also to grow professionally. I know that for me personally, getting in my community, even at a young age, has turned into a lot of opportunities, even when I was doing that back in high school. So, can you tell me a little bit about what it is that you do in your community? Just give us a brief rundown of some of the projects that you're involved in.
Sure, and that's actually a really great point. And it's actually one of the ways I actually kind of got started in the beginning with Brand Point. So earlier I said I use social media to kind of start to develop this kind of profile connections. But in the beginning, when I didn't really have clients, I actually just gave of my time and volunteered. And so I always suggest that to people too when you're just starting out with a business, is to offer your services. It'll get you to out in front of people and kind of show people what you can do. But that's just good karma, putting that out there. For me, I've always had a strong place in my heart for children and for women. I give of my time, treasure, and talents usually for any organization that has to do with women or young girls. So I do a lot of speaking. I haven't this last year because I've had so many different initiatives I've been trying to roll out, but I typically will try to go and speak to schools at least once a month to young women who are looking to possibly start businesses. I am a big supporter of the Dallas Women's Foundation, and also the Urban League of Young Professionals. I really love that group. I used to actually serve a position within the organization, but now I just usually support them either through attending events or maybe possibly donations. But Urban League of Young Professionals is great because it's a large group of people who are active in their community, but they're professionals too. So it's almost like you get your networking in, but also get the community service at the same time. And then finally, I really love the Dallas Children's Advocacy Center. They work with children that have either been in tough homes or have been taken away from their parents or have witnessed really challenging things. They use art and music to not only get the children to express maybe some of the negative things that have happened in their lives, but to also kind of bring joy back too. So for me, and it's one of the things actually I've already been kind of working on my 2015 plan. And one of this is to increase the amount of civic engagement that I do on a monthly. I think that as you get more successful and as your income increases, so should your community service too.
That's a really good point. As far as your success, as successful as you get, or as you climb that ladder and you start to get where you want to go in your career, really making sure that you're giving that level of attention to people who aren't there.
Exactly.
And that definitely leads me to the question: how does doing this help you in your business? I mean, specifically, can you tell us about some times where you were doing something, volunteering, or serving your community, and it led to a business connection?
Yeah, it would say all of it. So with business, especially I think being someone who's under 40, someone who is I've financed my business pretty much all on my own. And also someone who didn't have some of those corporate business connections in the beginning. My connections and relationships built with community service have definitely served as a foundation for kind of Brand Point where it is today. When you serve on a board or you volunteer in a group, so even just packing lunches or gathering clothes for people during the wintertime, you build certain bonds with people when you're giving back, because I think you get to see people at their true essence. And a lot of times too, as opposed to when you go to a networking event where it's led with business cards and what you do and where you come from, the company you work with. Sometimes when you're doing community service, you really get to connect with what people's passions are. And I think when people know what your passions are, they're more likely inclined to connect with you in a business way. So a lot of times when I was doing community service work, we weren't even talking about branding, marketing, or what I do. It just kind of came out because that's what I'm passionate about. And so when you're giving back, eventually these people you've been in relationships with, those you plant seeds, and I think those seeds now are starting to grow for me. But eventually people see you give your time freely with nothing, no gain back, and they also realize she's also passionate about marketing and branding. So eventually over time, those relationships have kind of evolved into things that have translated to actual business or revenue, which is not something that was ever planned. But I think that's what the beauty of community service is, going in and giving freely of your heart. It's a good karma. It always comes back.
You mentioned a couple of organizations that you're involved in and you're passionate about. How does, if I'm starting out and I'm new to this and I'm thinking, okay, I want to get involved, I want to start getting out there, what are some of the things that I would think about as a newbie, fresh, maybe out of college, or maybe I'm just trying to I'm at a point in my career where I'm in between careers. How do I go about finding something that connects with what I do in my area of expertise?
Well, I think the way you have to think about it is what you're passionate about. Because I truly believe that when you connect with your passion, it connects with your purpose. I think those two things are so equally aligned. So I wouldn't even start with the current business capacity, whatever you do. I would make a list, and that's actually what I'm doing for 2015. As I started to say, you know what, Jasmine, I didn't get to do a lot of community service. I definitely did it from the purchasing tables and attending events, and that's one aspect of philanthropy, but I really like to get in there. So I started thinking about how would I like to make a difference this year. And for me, it's always going to be women, and it's children. So those would be the two, and then the arts. Those are the three areas for me that I want to actually give of my time. Now, what you do within those organizations, I think, is how you can kind of bring everything together. So typically when I join an organization, I will try to join a committee first to see if I like the organization, if they like me, if I get along with the kind of structure, if it fits my work schedule. I think that's a biggie too, and that's kind of why I pulled back this year, because my schedule was too crazy. But so the first thing is list out your passions, identify the organizations, and see if there's a committee that you can join first before kind of dip your toe in the water to get a feel for the organization. I typically always, though, serve on a branding, marketing, social media committee within those organizations. So I think that's where you're really allowed to shine. If you're someone that works in finance or banking, they always have a finance committee. They always have a technology committee. They always have a development, a fundraiser. So if you're in sales. So I think that's probably the best approach, is to start with your passions first, and that will eventually lead to your purpose, and people will start to see what you're really good at.
I definitely connect with that. I'm involved in some things, and it's interesting because once you get started, you kind of can't stop
So
because
true.
you get started in something, and then you meet someone else that's like, oh, I think you would be great doing this, or you might join an organization because of the professional development. So, for instance, I joined American Advertising Federation because of the industry that I'm in, and then all of a sudden, I was like, okay, they were like, can you please be on the board? And I'm like, oh man, I mean, and it's been rewarding for a lot of the things that I am involved in. And sometimes I'm not. I'll be completely honest. It does get a little bit overwhelming because
Mm-hmm.
you have your foot here and your hand here and your other foot here. But I know it pays off, and I know that I'm impacting my community. It's kind of like a second job, yes, but it does make me feel good because it makes me feel like, I'm really out there serving my community. So it can be a little overwhelming at times, but I want to ask you, what are some of the mistakes or the missteps that you see people do when they get into organizations, or they get into the mind frame that they want to be a community leader? Because I know, and I see people every day that are out there maybe working for the wrong reasons.
Mm-hmm. And actually, great point that you said. The kind of place I'm in now is about quality versus quantity. So there was a time, that's really why I pulled back in 2014, because I had gotten too overextended. I was on too much, because when people see that you're smart and love community service and want to give back, they will always want you to bring you on board, because that they need that passion and that drive. But you have to really be mindful of what your overall goals are. So like you made a great point of, you like to see yourself visually in some of the kind of printed pieces or some of the external things. And I think that is actually a great idea as far as, well-rounded your personal brand. But there's a lot of work and a lot of things that go on behind the scenes that you don't ever hear about. And so one of the things I always caution people is figure out what your overall goals are. If you want to get your brand out there and be a little bit more visually present so that people see that you're out and about, you don't have to join boards or community service to do that. That would be more of a, let me establish a really good cohesive networking plan so that I'm hitting all the different groups, and I'm at the events where I'm going to be photographed, or they're going to be kind of journaling people's stories. So that would be one aspect. If you join a board or you get into that level of community or get into that level of participation, that means you truly care about the fabric of the organization. For me, I really cared about, I would think at one time I had finished Leadership Dallas leadership program, which was with the Dallas Regional Chamber, which I highly recommend. After that, though, you're like the top draft pick. I had gotten so many requests to join boards. I think at one time I was on 5 or 6. It had gotten really crazy. I loved all the organizations, though, but I had to step back, and that's kind of what 2014 was for me, was just to kind of pull back, identify, look more quality versus quantity. If you join a board, that means you really want to affect change throughout the entire organization. That's a level of commitment that you have to be really serious about. You can still support an organization and not be on the board. Now, if you're really trying to build a personal brand where you want to be considered a leader in the community, yes, board service is pretty critical with that. But you can serve on a board and a committee with another organization. I think work comes first, of course, and then you start to look at how much time do I have left, and what do these organizations do for me personally, but also professionally. So I would say the biggest mistake is getting overextended, which I made that big mistake a couple years back, and just pull back altogether. Would that be that? And then 2 would be, what is your purpose for getting involved? If it's connections and networking, that's one of the best things about community service, but you don't have to take on a leadership role to do that.
That's very true. And it's the one thing you said is a lot of behind the scenes. So for instance, if you are someone that's involved in the membership, nobody sees that you call every member and say,
Exactly.
are you coming to this meeting? We're
Exactly.
having an event, or, especially when it comes to the planning or the person who gets the sponsorships, no one sees that. That is, that's a tough one. And I think what you said was awesome about you having to really know what it is that you want to do, because those things, everything that you do involved in an organization, whether you're in the leadership role or or not, they have their endpoint of where they want to go. Wherever it is that they're going, you have to be headed in that same direction. I've seen it
Exactly.
happen so many times where someone joins an organization and they are, in the leadership position, and they're trying to take this organization to a place that they don't want to go.
Right.
Because I'm a, expert at sales, I think that we should, add 35 more sponsorships to this. And it's just like, well, we don't want to dry people's pockets out. I think
Right.
we have to definitely connect with your heart first and say what is it that I want to do to, like you said, affect change. And I think it might lead you to the organizations that you want to go to, and it probably will lead you out of some of the organizations that you're in,
Exactly.
when you really connect to what you want to do.
So, and yeah, and you'll pull back and you start to see that, am I being effective or am I being efficient? I wrote about this a couple years ago, because especially women, as women, we are just known as multitaskers, and sometimes we don't even know how exhausted we are, based on, because we're just known to go, go, go. But it's like, I realized for me, I want to be effective. I want to actually serve a purpose, but also be mindful. Sometimes you could be at an organization's meeting, and this is what happened to me. You're not even cognizant of it, because you have so much going on. You're so exhausted and tired. And that's why I said, the next groups that I join or get really heavily involved, I want to really be in mind and heart completely and not distracted. So for me, I think it's, especially as you're a young professional too, and then being really ambitious, you want to do a lot of stuff. But if you build the right relationships, and you really work on your reputation, meaning online and offline. So what you say online matches who you are offline. If you are someone who goes for leadership opportunities rather than roles, that those things over time, all those seeds being planted will pay off for you. A lot of times when I meet people, they think Brand Point just started, overnight. But for me, I was in the Brownies and Girl Scouts when I was younger. Like things about leadership and community service start when you're younger. They start a long time ago, and so we put this pressure on ourselves to get to a certain place within 2 years or after I graduated. But really, a true career and true kind of brand evolves over time. It only gets better as you keep going. So to me, it's to take the pressure off, especially when you're a young professional who's super ambitious, and I definitely fit that category. To take that pressure off, that you have time to think about quality and pick one organization, or even two if you're scheduled out, but pick one and really kick butt at that one. Like really develop yourself within the organization, make as many contacts, and then start to evolve as your career evolves. Then you can start to add on more. Would probably be my biggest advice.
I think that's the best piece of advice, especially if someone is just starting out. It is so easy to get caught in a lot of different organizations and causes and boards and committees. But I think the smart approach would to be, before you even go out there and put yourself out there, to take an inventory of what it is you really want to accomplish as a person, as a professional, as a leader, and then go out there, because I think it will minimize you having to go through that phase that we both talked about, which is I'm everywhere but I'm nowhere.
Right. Exactly. Yeah. And you just get burned out. And even that you don't want someone to be 25 and already feel burned out. So that's why just the baby step approach that true leaders build and evolve over time. They don't, there's some people who are kind of, even like if you look at someone like P. Diddy or Puff Daddy, whatever his name is today, even with him, he would be the first one to tell you that his rise to kind of where he is now, that happened. A lot of hustling, a lot of seed planting, a lot of him working at the bottom and building his way up. I think a lot of times people today, I think social media we have so much access to some of these big names that it feels like it's very easy to be this big brand or big name, but you still have to put the work and time in there. So it's like your ambition, you should definitely support your ambition and feel that you can go as successful as you want to go, but giving yourself the time to do. Don't feel like you have to do so much in so little time. You have plenty of time.
I want to touch back on something that you said. The question, when you were answering the question we just talked about, you said and this might be a little bit off topic, but I really want you to go into this because I've never really heard anybody put it like this, and I think it's important. You said what you say online should match who you are offline.
Right.
Talk a little bit about that in regards to being a leader or being in the community, and how does that relate?
Yeah. So one of the kind of from doing this for so long and seeing it, and being exposed to so many different people and companies, one of the things that I've learned, my little mantra is who you are is the business you create. And so social media is very easy to create this kind of character, if you will, this person that's not really actually existing, because it's quick. People, the way we connect now is so fast. We don't really kind of give credence to these kind of developing relationships anymore. Everything's so fast. And a lot of times what I've noticed with people, especially younger people, that they've got one perception online or one kind of perspective of themselves, but it doesn't match who they are offline. And so I even say this with companies too. If your brand looks really fun and personable online, social, but then if they go to an event or try to actually call your company and it's actually the complete opposite, that's where the disconnect comes from. And I think if you're someone who is a leader and driven and business mind and want to be entrepreneur, then that's fine. Everything should match that though. But I think a lot of times people feel like they have a lot of pressure to maybe send out business quotes or to send out things that feel very business minded, when offline that's not really what they want to do. They don't really necessarily want to be a huge massive leader or start a business or anything like that. So I always feel that when you identify what your purpose is, then you go forward with that. So if you're someone who's civic minded online, then you should be civic minded offline. If you care about causes online, then you should have some skin in the game offline. So that's kind of and that's to me the basic foundation of a really strong brand is it matches everywhere you meet them. So for me, people know I'm hardworking. I work all the time. I'm overwhelmed all the time because I'm ambitious and love actually the work I do. But the work ethic and the care and compassion are still there despite all the craziness. But it's the same thing that's online. Who I am online is the same person offline. And that's why I always try to tell people the perfection. I think we're faced with this thing. Social media sets, especially Instagram too, because it's now really only images now at this point. There's not even a ton of copy to support anything. But we now live in this world where everything needs to be perfect, even the selfies and the photos. And I just try to warn people to say that you should work and focus on who you are offline should match who you are online. So it's okay to not be perfect. That whoever you are offline, if you lost your job or you don't know what you want to do, or maybe you're having tough relationship issues, you don't have to be perfect online as well. And that's the same goes for companies. Maybe you did have a horrible leader that came in or manager that was horrible to customers, but that's okay. You can change that. But that I think it's really, really important for personal brands and professional brands to have a really kind of cohesive story. If I meet you online, then the person that I meet offline should match.
Absolutely. I think that's an awesome point. I think it also talks about, when you're out there and you're involved in organizations and you're the you're working, those people who you're working with, those community leaders, they're they're looking at you. Even if they're not your friend on Facebook, they know somebody that is, and they're like, "Oh,
Exactly.
let me see. Oh, I didn't." And I think it's important for people to understand too that, you know, you might think that people aren't looking at you and they're blocked, or I have a private account, but nothing's private. And it would be a sad day if you were involved in an organization, you worked years, you became really known by being involved with this organization, and you did a lot of work to help, and then somebody found out online that you weren't that person. You're different.
Exactly.
You are, and I don't even think people think about that, especially, oh man, it's just so many things that could go wrong when you represent, because when you're volunteering, you're out there, you are the face of that company and that organization. They have staff, yeah, but the staff is not who's out there doing the work, and volunteering and making things happen. It's typically you. And so you kind of work for them a little bit, and you have to remember that.
Well, no, and I think a lot of times it's social so easy and moves so fast, especially when I talk to girls in high school. I've noticed they're the biggest ones where they really don't think that the things that they're posting will have any kind of effect because they can't see anything past, where they are currently in high school. But you've got the same thing with women in their 20s and 30s as well, that if you put certain images or you post certain things, even for me, I'm passionate about a lot of causes, but because I use my social media for both business and personal, you won't see me ever come out on any specific cause. Now, offline, you may, in a personal discussion, yeah, you may, but there's certain things that I have to be mindful of. And really, I always tell people to live their lives in a personal way. And what that is you should be on all the time. And unfortunately, we don't live in a space now where you can have two separate. Like a lot of times people have a separate personal Facebook and a professional Facebook. I don't think that's really the best deal, because if you live in a personal world where these two things, you should always be on at all times. You can be yourself on social, but be mindful that anybody, like you said, could see this at any time. And it could come back to haunt you too, because exactly what you said, they can pull up everything, especially if it's a police matter. I remember I actually, in Leadership Dallas, we had a criminal justice day and we got to tour some of the police department. They have a whole social media unit. They can go back years and pull up everything. It was really kind of eye-opening, but it told me that I was on the right track to be kind of careful of what I post.
That is interesting. I did
Yeah, they
not
can
know
pull up
that.
everything. Even
Okay.
things that you've deleted, they can pull it up.
Y'all be careful out there. We're kind of closing in on the time. I feel like I really want to ask you one more question, because you are a business person, a businesswoman, and there are so many socially driven businesses right now. They're businesses right now that are doing things. Basically to help and change people, and it is about the the cause isn't just about let us make money. The cause is about let us feed people, or let us put shoes on people, or it's very interesting because this is happening right before our eyes, and I just kind of wanted to get your thoughts about that, because it's really mixing those two worlds.
You mean using social for cause?
I
For
mean,
causes?
I mean, companies now that are coming out with the social cause being their number one thing.
Oh,
Like,
sure. No, actually, I'm excited about those, and they're kind of calling them social entrepreneurs, or socially innovative companies. I actually think that's just the direction we're going. Just like when I said about no longer personal and professional, this professional world where everything's kind of come together. Companies that care make money. I mean, I think that's just a basic principle. It's just like what we said earlier too about if you give up your time in the beginning, if you start a business or you're just getting out of school, those seeds will come back to pay off later. And I think that's just good karma. I think companies that have a social mission, and they decide to integrate that in every piece of the company. So the social mission is present in the operations, is present in the sales. I think that's the way companies, that's the direction we're going. I think before it was really separate. I know when I used to work corporate, we would have like we worked United Way, and we would do like a jeans day, and you put $1 in or whatever. I mean, it was a very kind of separate kind of philanthropy. It was super separate. But I think if you create this culture of care and this culture of compassion, that's going to trickle down to customers. I honestly believe you can't have a company that's mean to people or does bad work when they care about the community. I just don't think those two things go in hand. And most companies that do really great customer service or have great products, I feel like they typically will always have a good social mission involved in there too. People really honestly, I think, want to care. They just maybe not know how to do it. So if the company is able to provide those opportunities for the employees, then I think that makes a really great organization. So I'm excited about it, and I think it also makes for more interesting social media too. It's not just sales and pushing product. They actually are talking about the people they're helping too.
right, exactly. And I think that makes us feel a little bit more. It makes me personally feel safe when I see these companies out there. It makes me feel like you could be making so much more if you would just cut out this piece of your business that's that social piece, but you're not. I mean, sometimes
Mm-hmm.
businesses will take a loss in the beginning. A lot of the times just to keep that cause top of mind in front of people's faces and continue to support it. So it makes me feel. And though there's not a ton of them out there, I do see the change happening. And as a consumer, it makes me feel safe in my purchase. It makes me feel that, it's not all about people just completely making money and not thinking about the world. So I definitely could connect to what you were saying.
Well, and you know what it is too? It's just not just financial currency, it's social currency. So sometimes when people do social media, they're like, oh, we shouldn't invest in social media because it's not going to turn around and give us like actual direct cash or money, but it's called social currency. If people feel good about your company, like you just said, if they feel safe, they eventually going to spend money. So I think it's just it's just a different mindset that we're all kind of moving to.
Yeah. Okay, well, we are coming to the close of the interview, and I'm so excited that you decided to do this. I've been wanting to chat with you for a long time, so I'm glad that we got to do
time.
it.
Definitely.
But before we go, is there anything else that you kind of want to your big tip or something that you want to leave people with before we log off?
Yeah, I would probably say it's probably going to be my mission for 2015. I actually am going to be doing some speaking at several schools starting in January and trying to get actually across the country to really talk about this idea of turning your passion into purpose. So a lot of times I didn't think I knew what I wanted to do career-wise, but now in my 30s, it now has made sense. But when you first start out, you don't always know that, and so I think one of the goals I would say, if I would tell everyone for 2015, this is something they can start on working now, is to start to identify what your passion is. And the way I always kind of get closer to that is it something you would do where you don't actually have to get any kind of money for, and then something that would keep you up at night and you wouldn't even track time. And then the second question would be, if I looked at the closest 5 people in my life, are they actually helping direct me to that passion? I think those are 2 biggie questions that people should ask themselves, so that as you head into this new year, you kind of start off on a really great plan for the year, but also you're not wasting time with people or projects that may not be adding to what you're your long-term goals are. And passion is something that if you've got that, you won't ever feel like you're working again. So that's why it's one of my biggest missions, to get people more connected to that.
Awesome. Connect with your passion. Jasmin, where
Yep.
can we find you? If people want to get more information on you or connect with you, where can they find that?
They can, of course, go to Brandpoint, our website, which is brandpoint.co. But I'm on all the social networks. You can find me on Facebook. No E on Jasmin. And then Twitter, same thing, Jasmin Brand. And Instagram, I think I'm Jasmin Brands with an S. I think some girl in Minnesota already had Jasmin Brand.
Dang. Man. All right. Well, thank you so much for coming on. You can find all the links and resources mentioned in this podcast